Hi everyone, and welcome to today's live webinar with Rio SEO. I'm Krystal Taing and I will be your moderator for today. If this is your first time joining one of our webinars, we want to thank you for taking the time out of the day and hopping on with us. A few housekeeping items to go over while we still have attendees dialing in. Due to the size of the audience, we'll keep everyone on mute. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please send them over via the panel box on GoToWebinar and I'll loop them into our discussion. If we don't get to your questions during the webinar, we'll follow up with you via email afterwards. We'll also be sending out a recording of today's panel within 24 hours, so no need to take a bunch of notes. Look out for an email from our marketing team. Now on to introductions. As I mentioned, I'm Krystal Taing, Director of Local Strategy at Rio SEO. You'll also hear from Rio Senior Product Manager John Toth throughout the webinar. Today, we're going to talk all about Google My Business's Q&A feature. We know it's a busy time of the year, so we'll make sure to keep this quick and jam-packed with actionable takeaways. We'll cover a little background of Google Q&A, we'll highlight some missed opportunities, and finally, we'll look to share some enterprise solutions, best practices on managing Google Q&A. So what is Google Q&A and why should you care about it? It was added to the Knowledge Panel in 2017, and it's essentially a free text communication tool that displays prominently on most GMB listings. It shows both questions and answers submitted by both businesses and users. It's displayed really prominently right underneath your location data. Questions and answers can be upvoted by users and businesses so that it becomes sticky right on your Knowledge Panel. It's important really to highlight the potential impact of Q&A because it furthers Google's focus on consumer engagement and really shows why you should be listening to your customer. Because of its prominent placement, monitoring and engaging with Q&A really allows you to control your brand voice. It shows your current and future customers that you're being proactive by building trust and helps improve your brand's reputation. And finally, it really helps in facilitating the customer journey. It's giving searchers the information that they're seeking during that moment in their decision-making process. You should really consider Q&A in your local presence management because potential customers are using this feature. They're often ready to make a purchase. These could be critical missed opportunities. We took a look across a sample of nearly 10,000 businesses and found that 42% have unanswered questions on GMB by either the owner or another consumer. Furthermore, we found that 88% of questions have been left unanswered or validated by the business. So we understand that brands, in particular multi-location brands, really have struggled in wrapping their arms around these new features and tools. So John's going to really review some common pain points about how brands can find a solution to overcome these.
Hey everyone, as Krystal had said, my name is John Toth with Rio on the product side of things. One thing to kind of take away about Q&A is it's, as she referenced a moment ago, it's not been around for a long time, but there's long since been a kind of a curiosity as to how do we address this. We have full-time employees that are of course dealing with reputation management, and now Google's just introduced a whole new forum that allows anybody and everybody to respond to questions or post questions about our brand and leave it up to just about anyone to respond on behalf of the brand. And sometimes that information can be misguiding. So one thing in this engagement of the next few minutes here, of course, is that we welcome questions. We want you guys to feel comfortable with asking questions. We'll do our best to get to as many as possible in the time allotted. But first and foremost, I wanted to identify the 3 most common opportunities for Google Q&A. So some of which already kind of reference exactly what I just spoke to a moment ago. Notifications and centralized management. Like, how do you keep track of all the questions asked across all of your locations? Time savings. Like, is there an opportunity for you to be able to get back some time by proactively leveraging the tool that is Google Q&A? And then also improve your visibility. How do you become aware of the narrative? Like, what are people saying about your brands? One of the main talking points I spoke to just a moment ago when I opened our conversation. So starting off with the first topic that I just called out a moment ago, notifications and centralized management solution. Brands don't have a holistic way to view all incoming questions without a tool. Google doesn't necessarily make this any easier for you, especially if you have less than 100 locations, but what if you are one of those brands that has more than 100 locations? Unfortunately, if your account does have greater than 100 locations, your brand will not receive notifications through the Google My Business app. So that leaves you with having to use a tool such as the solution that we have in place for you today. Our solution provides corporate level view of questions and answers across all locations from one centralized dashboard. We also allow you the ability to pull data across all locations or segment based on specific types of locations or regions, et cetera, if you have multiple team members working on this with you. We have the ability to easily monitor all incoming content in one place, and that's going to be partnered up with your reputation management solution as well. So it's not as if it's this yet another incremental tool that you have to have access to and distribute across your teams. It's still in the same reputation management tool that we have available to you, and it bolts on very nicely. We have the ability for you to set up alerts for new questions and or new answers. So if you're really only caring about the narrative that's going on and being answers to questions that are being answered by individuals out in the field, regular consumers or whatever, you can receive alerts so that you can jump on it if necessary, just in case people are being steered in the wrong direction. And we also, of course, have you or allow you the opportunity to just view all incoming questions as they come in, just the same as a new review that might come into your establishment. Reports are extremely important in today's age, right? So the ability to identify counts of questions that come in without a business owner's answer, as well as the ability to define the number of locations without questions in themselves. This is all based on the location level. You can have this in a scheduled format over a period of time. So default is, of course, over 30 days, but if you want a larger snapshot, you can have this exported to you in real time via Excel, or you can schedule it out so that you receive this on a recurring cadence that you can define as an end user. The next one is, of course, the time savings. What does it come down to? Well, I want you to know, first and foremost, we make managing Q&A very easy, right? We want to be able to take that lost opportunity that Google doesn't provide and provide you the ability to do this centrally in one dashboard. For multiple locations, if you try to do this just through the Google My Business online interface, going through each of these individual locations is painful. Save time and respond to all incoming questions across your brand just in that single dashboard that we provide to you, which will eliminate the need to reference multiple resources to see the same questions and answers in any other format, right? And then finally, we provide business intelligence, right? So Q&A helps you understand where users are in their customer journey and what questions they have around your brand at different points in it. You would obviously through Q&A, you want to establish a consistent and compelling brand narrative at the places or points in which the consumer makes their purchasing decisions. As we can, oh, go ahead, yeah. Please.
Yeah, I was just going to say a question came in, and just to confirm, we do have Google My Business Q&A within our local manager dashboard. So if you're an existing Rio client or prospective Rio client, this is, an additional element of our existing local manager platform that we have today.
Great. So one nice thing about the tool in particular is that you can do a search function throughout the tool to seek specific keywords maybe that people might be using about your brand. On the screen, I'm not sure how clear it is to everyone in the field there, but we've circled the search box for a specific keyword of gluten. This is for Papa Murphy's, the well-known pizza chain. Basically, they have gluten-free crust. So what is the narrative around gluten-free crust? Are people or end consumers wondering, do you guys have gluten-free pizza? Is there a solution there? And so by typing in gluten, you're going to be able to filter all the relevant topics that come up. Hey, Google Q&A, do you guys have gluten-free pizza? Do you have gluten-free crust? I think that more or less the questions are going to jump around the exact same question, but if you want to be able to define that is something that you very much have, or maybe that's a new product or service offering that you are just coming out to market with, and that question is there, maybe we need to establish a way for you to better get that information out to the consumer's hands. And what better way to do it than Google Q&A, of course, right?
Yeah, and I would say as well, we've seen with other tools that Google's rolled out, whether it's Google Posts, whether it's descriptions or on-page content that's linked to your GMB profile, that Google is using it to better understand your business. In the cases of things like Google Posts, sometimes they're surfacing content within the post right in the knowledge panel. If someone's searching that has specific keywords and that keyword is in your post, they're going to say that Google post on this business references this specific keyword. We haven't seen that yet with Google Q&A. It doesn't mean it's not coming. And it also doesn't mean that Google's still not using that content to understand your business. So it is definitely a place for a lot of businesses to pay attention and see what users are asking and what are they asking often. If you don't know what they're asking frequently, you don't know what Google is now understanding about your business, whether it's a product or service you do have or you don't have based on that information that's there. So it's important really to understand as a best practice for managing Google My Business Q&A to respond in moments that matter. You want to be the voice of authority for your company, especially when there's this local guides program that looks pretty prominent and has this really, nice fancy star that looks like this person is authoritative. And they're answering questions about your business that you are not. You want to make sure that you're providing the accurate answer and that you're controlling the narrative for your business. Keep in mind that these are visible on your listing, not only to the person asking the question, which they do receive an alert in their app or wherever they submitted the question originally, but also to other consumers. It's just as much for potential customers and people looking to learn more about your business or location as it is for that person that originally asked your question. You'll also want to standardize your responses. In my opinion, I think responding to Google Q&A, you still want to be human in your responses, but you don't have to be as personal. As I mentioned, I think responding to Q&A is a little bit more for future customers as opposed to responding to reviews. So you want to have a slightly varied response compared to the way that you're going to respond to a review. That's definitely a person, whereas Q&A is part person and part public in terms of your response. So keep that in mind, humanize it, but make sure it's informative and helpful for everyone, not just that specific user.
Yeah, especially when it comes to being informative. There's some instances of Q&A posts or answers, for that matter, that I've seen elsewhere where people are redirecting you to go to a URL or something along those lines, right? What's more frustrating than that as a consumer to say, I have a legitimate question, I've posted my question on the appropriate endpoints here, but then someone comes back to me and says, go to this URL. I would much rather have some sort of a succinct answer saying, here's the answer to your question, and I can go about my merry way. It's all about that time of need, addressing the time of need so that I can come engage your brand.
Yeah, I think it's really important in understanding that like Q&A, the step that these exist is a very early process. Someone either found you by a branded or non-branded search, and they clicked on your knowledge panel. They may have taken 1 or 2 steps to get there. And then all of a sudden they have a question of information that's probably not available to them yet in this stage. So in this example, they want to understand what types of hairstyles are done at this location. For whatever reason, leading up to that point, they haven't been given that information. That's what they need, they need that answer right then in order to make a decision. Maybe they're looking for a fancy updo, so maybe this doesn't work. Or maybe they're looking for a really nice haircut for their kid and didn't realize it was available, and now they do know that it's or call in to speak to a stylist for additional information. So it's a very prominent piece of information that's available very early in the customer journey. The other element you want to keep in mind is there's oftentimes going to be common themes. We looked at the gluten example for the pizza restaurant. Here's one where it took us a couple minutes to search on a few businesses and find that users are asking the same question. I think as a business owner, this is going to tell you what type of additional content you need to build out. Where can you put this content? Is it something that you can add to your existing GMB listing, whether it's in the description, whether it's in a Google post, whether it's building out your service menus, those types of things, or maybe it's on-page content that if someone is searching for this information, you could potentially land an answer box or position 0. Right now, here's information we found about users want to know about a free birthday meal at Denny's. And then even whenever you search on Google, it doesn't come up with validated information that's helping to answer these users' questions. I think mining the information and developing content strategy, whether it's within your GMB profile, other local elements, or on-page strategy to really help answer these users' questions. The other thing that you want to really keep in mind is that while there's some gold nuggets within Google My Business Q&A, you definitely have to search for them. It's kind of easily becoming one of my favorite pastimes is just kind of going through Google My Business Q&A for a ton of different businesses, because you find some quite entertaining pieces of information there. But as a business, you have to realize that this is published on your publicly facing listing available to all consumers. And when it could negatively impact your brand, you wanna know what to do, have a strategy in place to control it. Some of it's funny, but I imagine if I'm, a manager or an owner of one of these businesses, it's probably not that funny to them. So these are things to keep in mind. Come up with a strategy for what do you do if it's a wrong response, if it's an invalid response, if it's against guidelines. Just like reviews, you can flag Q&A. But additionally here, what you can do is you can upvote a question as well as a response. So anytime there's going to be multiple responses, you can get your team or some colleagues and post the right response and then have everyone upvote it so it displays prominently on the knowledge panel. And then also, if it's just a question that doesn't have a response but it's valid, it's definitely one you want to get. And then upvote as well, just in case, someone might come along, maybe a local guy trying to earn some points that may have a different answer, and maybe it's funny or cheeky and you get other people that upvote that, and you don't want it over replacing your correct answer. So like I said, while it's funny to me, I'm sure, a lot of these businesses are concerned about this type of information being shared with consumers. So it's definitely something you want to pay attention to. There was another question that came through about Google Q&A being a ranking factor for Google Maps. There's no data right now that says it is. It doesn't mean that it's not going to be or just hasn't been proven. But just like all other content about your business on Google and on the internet, I think it's important to know that Google is using this to better understand your business. So things like you have a lot of questions about a birthday meal. Maybe Google is going to consider that when people are searching free birthday meals near me. They may not be ranking you now, but that doesn't mean they aren't. So that would definitely be something if you're mining your data for a lot of content about your business. Maybe, consider adding that to your ranking, or consider running some long, query keyword strategy considerations whenever you're taking a look at that. Are you ranking for these now? If you start answering these questions or developing content around that, is it something you can possibly secure? All right.
Yeah, so I think that these are all really, fantastic opportunities for us to kind of further explore Q&A, something that's been there for, since 2017, as Krystal mentioned earlier in the call. But just what are we doing? How are we armed to basically attack this from an all-angled front, right? So now that you have a little bit more awareness for Q&A, what are the considerations you should be planning for as you move forward? Well, I think first and foremost, obviously assemble your team and understand what Q&A will look like in your organization, right? So is this going to go to the social team, your marketing team? Is this going to be an extension of your reputation management solution? With some brands we work with, this is the first foray into reputation management, just because they don't have the FTEs to support a full, robust solution. So they want to see how they can scale it and start small with something like Google Q&A. Set up best practices. So what do you do with some less than stellar questions or comments that come through on there? How do we address this in a united front so that the brand reigns superior in terms of their authoritativeness in terms of the responses that they're publishing out on Google? Stay professional. Someone says that they had a poor experience for whatever reason. Of course, we want to address that in a proactive manner. It's the same as you would with a reputation management solution. So handle it the exact same way. And then also finally determine how you're going to report on your findings, both externally and internally, and what you can do with this new user data. Krystal gave a number of great examples a moment ago, but this could also parlay very nicely into entity pages, another solution or offering that we have at Rio to help you bolster and actually impact rank by trying to attract those questions that people are asking most prominently across all of your locations. Maybe we have an extension opportunity to your locator pages and offer a solution in that regard, all of which is very much within our bandwidth and certainly something that you can control.
Yeah, like I mentioned before, I think There's some stuff to mine through when it comes to Q&A, but there's really important information you can find that, quite honestly, just isn't available whether you're doing rank reporting or keyword research. We ran an analysis on one of our financial brands, and out of 500 of their locations, I think about 30% of those had questions about notary services, which they had on their website. They didn't have on their landing pages and was nowhere in their GMB profile. So there's definitely information. You just, kind of have to deploy the resources, come up with a plan. And, as John said, maybe it's not responding to all those questions initially. Maybe it's just getting your arms around it to see what you guys are dealing with. And maybe it's first using for information, secondarily responding and making sure that there's no invalid answers posted.
Yeah. So I think, unfortunately, you're coming up on time here. It's amazing how fast this all goes on these interesting topics, of course, but there's a couple things we want to leave you with so that you can get back to your busy day. I know it's a holiday week and everything for a lot of people, but first and foremost, Krystal, myself, everyone here at Rio does appreciate the time you spent with us, albeit, just a short period of time. Hopefully it does give you the ammunition necessary for you to establish a plan maybe in the new year, not sooner. But if you're seeking an enterprise solution, to speak to that, we'd love to, speak with you more on one-on-one in terms of what we can do, and more than happy, of course, to schedule a quick walkthrough with someone on the Rio team. I think there's a URL here at the very bottom of this slide. Of course, don't necessarily need to write it down. We're going to be sending out an outreach here afterwards. Just thanking you, of course, for your time today, but go ahead and please reference that email for any links or seeking advisement for follow-up opportunities. But if you're an existing client also, please reach out to your account director. They're more than happy to discuss this with you and just kind of come up with a proactive solution based on what you're seeing. So with that said, I think that that's more or less it, unless we have any other questions, Krystal.
Yeah, we do have a couple questions, but I don't want to, like I said, I want to keep everyone's time short because it's a holiday weekend. We'll follow up via email, and thanks everyone for tuning in. You'll get a recording within the next 24 hours.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone.